So a little bit about the Clean Cities Network. The Clean Cities Network is a federal Department of Energy partnership operating in 75 different cities. We work to adopt clean and equitable transportation technologies around the country. Here in Connecticut, we're fortunate enough to have 3 coalitions. So I'm part of the New Haven Coalition. My director and boss is Paul Wessel on the call. We also have Craig Peters in the Capital Clean Cities region, and that's sort of the Hartford and Wyndham area. And then Daphne Dixon in the Southwest area Clean Cities. And that's the Panhandle and sort of the Torrington area. And what we do is promote clean transportation. We try to share unbiased information and help fleets get what they need to adopt clean transportation. So an overview for today, we have an all-star lineup for you. We're very pleased to have John Blair with us first. He's the president of the Motor Transport Association of Connecticut, otherwise known as MTAC. Followed by John, we're going to have Richard Battersby talk a little bit about his fleet in Oakland. He's the public works director there. He uses renewable diesel every single day. He's a wealth of information, so I encourage you, please ask questions, drop them in the chat. We're just sort of starting to have the renewable diesel conversation in Connecticut, but he's been doing it for years. So we're very thankful that he made the time for us today. He's also the East Bay Clean Cities Coalition Director. So shout out Clean Cities again. We also have a couple more Clean Cities people on the call. I think I saw Vermont, Pittsburgh, and Maine. So shout out Clean Cities. Lastly, we're going to talk about the supply in Connecticut. We have partners from East River Energy here to talk about how they supplied the project at Yale, which was very exciting in the first project to use renewable diesel in the state. And then we also have our partners from Global Partners, and they recently leased the terminal in East Haven. And so we're going to have a continued growing supply of renewable diesel available for us. And just to set the stage a little bit, why renewable diesel? We don't need a lecture. I think we all know diesel exhaust is pretty bad, especially from heavy-duty vehicles. It's directly correlated to cancer and contributes disproportionately to greenhouse gas emissions. Electric isn't a great option for high-load, heavy-duty vehicles like snowplows, which is a very unique problem to the Northeast. There's a lot of infrastructure challenges, and you have to, that comes with a cost, right? And then, we are the land of steady habits, but we also have a big energy challenge in our state. Renewable diesel is an opportunity to sort of help reduce our emissions, both NOx and carbon, and not add to the grid load, right? So there's a lot of really good reasons to be excited. It's not a perfect fuel, but it's an option that's out there. So with that, I will pass it over to John Blair, who's the president of the Motor Transport Association of Connecticut. Thank you, John. You have the floor.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to Paul and Peter for putting this on. They've been attending my events and supporting my events. It may not look like there's synergies between my organization and Clean Cities, but there are a lot of them, actually. And Paul and I have been trying to advance some of that here in Connecticut. As Peter mentioned, the concept of renewable diesel in Connecticut is relatively new. I've been working actively with the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association to discuss how we can best bring renewable diesel energy into the state of Connecticut. As you know, in Connecticut, we had a fight last year and the year prior on whether or not to follow CARB or not. I know probably many people on this call would have appreciated CARB being passed, but obviously for my industry and the people I represent, it was a very difficult thing that we would have had to tackle over the next few years, which you see going on in Massachusetts and other states that did adopt CARB. We are an organization. I've been here 3 years. I'm not an organization that's not willing to build green and find ways to do that. In fact, I spoke with many of my members, let's say like beer wholesalers and others that would love to move the EV direction. We just don't have the infrastructure here in Connecticut yet. And I think Peter kind of alluded to that in saying that, look, there's a cost associated with us doing what we need to do in order to get to the right place. But we do want to be a partner in getting to the right place. So ideas like this of renewable diesel is something we can do today. I mean, as we will talk about, there's some people on the call that are much more fluent in this, but because it's a chemical equivalent to petroleum diesel, because there's the cost point is about even with regards to petroleum diesel now. It does obviously reduce GHG emissions. It works in cold weather. There's no blend necessary if you necessarily have to do it. The nice part about it is because it's a chemical equivalent, it can be pushed through the same transportation lines as regular petroleum is today. So there's a lot of positives about this, and I guess for my organization and folks that want to jump into it, the cost seems to be okay. It's the supply issue, and I know there are folks on this call that are going to talk about supply a little bit later. But the last thing I would say, the other thing is there are companies within my membership that are already using what they call it the clear. They're using it at Tilcon, and the mechanics at Tilcon have uniformly said that the engines and equipment are come out being treated much better using renewable biodiesel. So I'm happy to be part of it. I'm happy to be part of trying to come to a solution with you guys, pushing my members to use this. I'd be happy to work with folks on, and with that, I think I'll kick it over to folks that have been working on this a little bit longer than I have, but certainly see us as an open book here to helping out on this particular issue. Thanks.
Thank you, John. It really means a lot that you're here, and appreciate your support. So next, we're going to have Richard Battersby from Oakland, California. He's the Public Works Director there, and he's also the East Bay Clean Cities Coalition Director. Rich, you have the floor. You should be able to control the slides too. Let us know if you can.
I'll give it a shot. Hey, thanks, Peter. Thanks to all for having us. I'm here in sunny California experiencing a cyclone bomb rain event. So you've got rain, we've got rain. We've got renewable diesel. Hopefully you'll be exploring this option as well. I'm just going to talk to you a few minutes today about renewable diesel. Like was mentioned earlier, I'm the director for the East Bay Clean Cities Coalition in Oakland, California. I've been doing that over 20 years. I've been working with all sorts of alternative fuels, but that doesn't pay the bills. My day job, I've been a fleet manager for over 25 years. I'm currently the assistant director for the City of Oakland Public Works, and we've been using renewable diesel since about 2015 with excellent results. And let's see. I don't know if I have control of the slide. Can we advance the slide? Oh, here we go. I got it. Never mind.
Okay.
I think I figured it out. Too much technology. So fundamentally, renewable diesel is a drop-in fuel for petroleum diesel. It's made from the same feedstocks as biodiesel, but it is a much different product. Biodiesel is a great fuel, but it does have some limitations, and it also has some particular advantages. But the main takeaway is when you hear renewable diesel, don't necessarily think biodiesel. It has superior performance in cold weather and longevity as far as storage and shelf life. So just keep that in mind. I think I'm getting out of control here with my slide advancing. This is just a basic slide that shows the difference of the two. Renewable diesel is made through the traditional petroleum refining process of using heat and pressure, whereas biodiesel is typically produced using a chemical process. And that's why in the early days, biodiesel had some variation between batches. Using a refining process, much more controllable, and you get a more consistent product. And again, I love biodiesel. I use biodiesel. This is just, I think it's known as a second generation biofuel. Renewable diesel is an advancement on the progress made with biodiesel. So what is renewable diesel made from? I mentioned it comes from the same feedstocks. In California, the renewable diesel is primarily made from waste animal fat and used cooking oil, other waste products, and that gives it a carbon intensity down in the high 20s to low 30s. Another opportunity that you have with renewable diesel, very similar to biodiesel, used to be known as the closed loop. Now we call it a circular economy, and that's fundamentally in the city of Oakland. We have a program where waste oil, used cooking oil, grease products are collected from Oakland. They're taken to the refinery, refined into renewable diesel, and then that fuel produced from Oakland-based waste is returned to Oakland to be used in city of Oakland vehicles. Kind of a cool concept. I always get questions about, hey, renewable diesel. I never heard of that before. How long has it been on the market? I first became aware of it around 2010, and the reality is in California, renewable diesel has been imported in very large quantities since 2010. Early on, it wasn't available in fleet use. It was just being blended in the statewide petroleum diesel supply to meet low carbon fuel standards. So that was a interesting little um, point that I make out, or I would make in the early days when the fuel was out. Folks would say, I don't really use renewable fuels. I'm not interested. And I said, hey, if you got a diesel and you've been buying diesel fuel in California, you've been using a component of renewable diesel since at least 2010. About 2015, the fuel became available for bulk fuel tanks, and that's when fleets really started deploying the fuel, and that spike that you see on the chart just went crazy. Again, not necessarily a new fuel. I wish I had a more recent graphic, but this just shows renewable diesel versus biodiesel imports. So even though it's just limited to imports, at the time, renewable diesel primarily was being refined overseas. That's not the case these days. Domestic renewable diesel production has just exploded over the last 3 to 4 years. So you may ask, why is this important to me? As I mentioned, renewable diesel production capacity is exploding. We're going to see large quantities of renewable diesel refined in the United States. Primarily California was the major consumer. We've also seen this use expand to Oregon and Washington. But as these refining facilities are coming online, we're seeing some clusters develop. Not surprisingly, California is a large refining center for renewable diesel, but Louisiana, actually, they were the first domestic production center, and they are also developing rapidly. But I think I have a slide coming up that shows some of the other domestic production facilities. Again, why is this important to me? These are all existing refineries that are either renewable diesel producing currently and expanding, or petroleum diesel that are being converted to refine renewable diesel. And primarily on there, right in the middle, you see Phillips 66 Rodeo Renewed. That's an 800 million gallon a year production facility. That's about 20 minutes from my home. I drive past it every day when I go to work. When it was coming on the books, when it was coming online, that was going to be the largest renewable diesel production facility in the United States. That's not necessarily the case anymore. I think there's a 1.2 billion gallon facility going in Texas. And this is the chart showing planned new renewable diesel production facilities. So you can see virtually across the United States, and then also in Canada, there's some locations that are either new facilities or converting. This is the chart I was referring to, or the map, just shows the production locations. You can see Louisiana and California I mentioned, but up in the I guess that's North Midwest, Central states, and of course Texas. But you can see Pennsylvania producing up in your neck in the woods, and I wouldn't be surprised as uptake increases to see renewable diesel available wherever petroleum diesel is being refined currently. How does renewable diesel compare to the current ultra-low sulfur diesel? The cetane rating is actually higher, and I'm probably wasted my time putting some arrows on here because you could just look at the chart and see. But when you talk to fleet managers, these are the things that are critical. The energy density, again, very similar to petroleum diesel, a little bit better than biodiesel. Energy content, right in the same ballpark. But this is where you get into some interesting statistics. The cloud points, -15. Obviously, that's superior to biodiesel. You do need to get a winter blend renewable diesel, but it's been proven. California, actually, we're getting quite a bit of snow currently in the Sierra Nevadas. So it was tested out by the State Department of Transportation. What are the emission benefits? I've seen it, it varies depending on the feedstock, but in California, the state regulates it to come in about 30 or so carbon intensity. So the emissions reduction is somewhere between 50 and 70%. One of the very little known, and that's the general greenhouse gas emissions. Another benefit that we weren't really thinking about when we switched to the renewable diesel is the particulate matter reduction. So there's a 30% reduction in particulate matter, which means you as a fleet manager, you've got 30% less particulate matter going into your DPF, your diesel particulate filters. This results in you may see a complete elimination of your manual regens, or if not, you'll see a significant reduction, and the cleaning frequency of the DPFs, it at least doubles. I wish I'd have done some baseline data capture prior to deploying renewable diesel, but it was just not something we expected. But it is a very real benefit that cuts down on your operations and maintenance and also reduces your vehicle downtime. Why are the carbon reduction numbers so important? I have a nice little video here. I'm not going to play it. It just shows the actual soot between renewable diesel burning and petroleum diesel burning, and the difference is visible. You can visually see the stark difference. And the photo there just shows the renewable diesel on the right. It's a little bit clearer product. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. But it is a much cleaner burning product that puts less particulate matter into your diesel particulate or your diesel particulate filters, also known as PM trap. And it also lowers your greenhouse gas emissions. This is just a visual graphic that shows the DPF for non-fleet managers, just to sort of illustrate the point. The DPF is basically a filter that catches the particulate matter, the soot going out of your tailpipe, and it plugs up and needs to be serviced regular and or cleaned. So what am I missing? I know renewable diesel sounds almost too good to be true, but it is indeed a drop in fuel. You don't have to modify your vehicle. You don't have to modify your storage tank. It doesn't void any manufacturer's warranties. I mentioned the particulate matter trap benefit. The cetane number is a benefit, and talks with UPS. They actually think they can redo their fuel map and maybe get a 1 to 2% fuel economy increase, which doesn't sound much if you're a municipal fleet like me. 1 to 2% fuel economy improvement, we probably wouldn't notice. But if you have a fleet that goes billions of miles a year, 1 to 2% is huge. The shelf life and winterization capabilities for renewable diesel are fantastic. And in California, it's cost comparable with petroleum diesel. And that is because we have the low carbon fuel standard. That's probably not necessarily the case in your neck of the woods, but as the production volume increases, we should see that cost delta come down, where states that don't have a low carbon fuel standard will still see a reasonable cost for renewable diesel. Right now in California, petroleum diesel hasn't been replaced by renewable diesel, but there's 650 retail stations and counting. Virtually any city in the state, you can go and find retail renewable diesel from branded fuel stations. And what was the difference between renewable diesel use in the city of Oakland? That little pie chart just shows we went almost 50% renewable diesel use overnight, or excuse me, 50% alternative fuel use overnight by switching to renewable diesel. Prior to that, and of course my slides don't align, prior to that, that pie slice of alternative fuel that the blue represents was probably less than 20%, maybe 15%. So that was an instant overnight switch to a renewable alternative lower emission fuel. And with that, that concludes my presentation. There's some links here. I can provide the PowerPoint to anybody that's interested, and happy to take any questions, I think, at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was great. And like you said, we're going to do questions at the end, but if they come, drop them in the chat, and we could get back to them at the end. But we appreciate you taking the time. So next, we're going to kick it over to East River Energy. They helped supply the project at Yale. Jesse was originally supposed to join us, but I think it's going to be Randy, I believe.
Correct. Randy Lohr from East River Energy, and I think Ryan Adinolfi is also on from East River. I'm not directly involved with the Yale project, but I can tell you a little bit about it. We're delivering off-road renewable diesel to the construction projects that are going on at Yale University. We're delivering to 500-gallon Transcube tanks that have their own pump, hose, nozzle, filter, and all indications that we're receiving from our contractor, Giordano Construction, have all been very positive with using the fuel. They've been using it since January of this year. So we're almost 12 months into their usage on the product, and they've had very good results with it. And I believe that we also are trying the fuel at Old Dominion Freight, which is one of our normal petroleum diesel customers. That's only really been within the last 30 days, so we're kind of waiting to see what kind of results.
I can chime in on that.
Okay.
But Ryan Adinolfi from East River here. I handle a lot of our national accounts and fleets, and renewable diesel, something that I started to introduce to them about 3-4 months ago. Many of them had heard of it, the likes of an Estes Express, R&L Carriers, obviously Old Dominion. Many had heard of it because of their presence outside of the Northeast, specifically California. And recently, Old Dominion has wanted to give it a shot here in the Northeast. And for the last couple of months now, they've been taking loads in the Boston market as well as the Springfield, Mass market, and again have been happy with the results. A key component for them at this point is that it has not been price restrictive. The difference between the on-road standard clear ULSD that they had been using and the R99 right now is within a couple cents. A lot of these large, especially publicly traded companies, are extremely cost conscious. So our hope is that it will continue to stay competitively priced so that customers like that can use it more and more.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting components about the project at Yale specifically that I talked to Jesse a little bit about was how Yale just wrote it into the contract, right? Like it became part of the cost of the total project. And, you know, it is a pretty large project, right? But the cost increased was very insignificant in terms of the whole scope of the thing, right? So, and from talking with Giordano as well, they say they're using it without a hitch. Hasn't really been any sort of difference between the efficiency in regular diesel as well.
The feedback I've had is that the efficiency and the effect it's had on engines is actually better. Everyone I've talked to universally has said that. Unfortunately, on the private sector side with a lot of this stuff, especially with the large national trucking fleets right now, it's a matter of the purchasing agents being given authority by their bosses to spend that extra 5 cents, whatever it may be. So I think it's a matter of just educating them more and more on some of the benefits of what the product actually offers and how you might be paying a little bit more on the fuel side, but you're picking up some efficiency and whatnot.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it as well. And we were so excited about the project you guys did, the feedstocks you guys used for that project too, were really great. And just happy to continue to work with you guys. Next, we're going to go to John Hackett with Global Partners. They recently leased the terminal in East Haven and should have a little bit more supply and continue to increase it in our state. So, John, you have the floor.
Thanks, Peter. My name is J.W. Hackett, Senior Director of Environmental Products at Global Partners LP. Just a little bit about our company. We're headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts, just outside Boston. We operate a network of liquid energy terminal complexes stretching from Maine around the Florida Straits and over into the Gulf, with some assets in the Dakotas and also in the Pacific Northwest. We also have a network of about 1,700 convenience stores that we either own or operate or supply under long-term agreements, mostly in the Boston, Washington corridor. We touch every molecule under the sun. Renewable diesel is a really exciting product for me and my colleagues. We offer R99, which is a 99% blend at our East Haven location, in addition to our terminals in Albany and Newburgh in New York, as well as Providence in Rhode Island. I don't want to, be repetitive. People talked about the emissions benefits earlier. We think a conservative minimum figure that folks can use for reduction is 50%. Everything that we touch meets the federal renewable fuel standard requirement of a 50% minimum reduction relative to baseline petroleum diesel. We have documentation that we can provide to customers that are interested in reporting out on their emissions progress if they have goals that they'd like to report out in. We work with them to help them achieve and document their goals. We also have a program to pair voluntary carbon offsets with our renewable diesel or other products in case folks are interested in having a bigger impact. Generally, when somebody's interested in renewable diesel, we work with them to establish a pilot. And I'm kind of happy to get into that, but I think a lot of folks here have kind of talked about the benefits. It's useful to anybody that utilizes distillate infrastructure that's looking to decarbonize. So.
Great. Thank you so much. We are ahead on time, and I love to be ahead on time because that's always great. But I will just open it up for questions now. Like I said, we have a lot of great wealth of information here. So if you guys have any questions as it pertains to renewable diesel, feel free to unmute yourself, put it in the chat.
It's Paul Wessel. When do either East River or Global expect that renewable diesel may be available from dealers, with pumps, whatever you call those? Any thoughts?
From Global side, we don't have any renewable diesel that's offered at our retail locations at this time. It's certainly something that gets talked about. If there's interest developing, we continue to evolve to meet the needs of our retail guests and customers at our liquid terminal complexes. One of our sites in New York has refuel for trucks. I believe John McCusker, who is in charge of our wholesale marketing department, is on the webinar. He may be able to speak to that better than I.
I did see John. He might have dropped off.
No,
there he is. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, I could just chime in. The dynamic we saw in California was once the bulk fuel was available, it slowly expanded. So we saw it in card lock use, which I'm assuming that's what you were referring to. Basically, a fuel depot that's in use by fleets.
Yep.
And then we saw some smaller retail stations. They ended up deploying through some grant-funded activities that was applied to E85 ethanol and also the renewable diesel. So the smaller specialty boutique fuel providers, they had the retail sites, we had the card lock, and then it expanded to retail. So the fact that it's not quite at retail yet, don't read anything negative into that. there's a lot of public awareness and educating that needs to take place before a fuel like this shows up retail. So I think you guys are probably ahead of the curve from most places in the United States, other than the West Coast, where we've got a lot of use of this fuel.
And I'm going to build on those comments just a little bit. The West Coast benefits from low carbon fuel standard or clean fuel programs, which help to cut down, well, in some cases, make the fuel cheaper than petroleum-based diesel. The East Coast doesn't have that yet. There are a number of states that have sustainability goals or climate change laws in place. Everybody's kind of in the process of sustainability price discovery right now on what the appropriate mix of programs and policy should look like. If they mimic the West Coast in this as they go along their journey, I would expect to see increasing amount of volume flowing into both the B2B, but also at the retail on the retail level.
We've been primarily concentrating on end users of the product, from my understanding. On the retail side, it's something that we would entertain, I think, along with comments from JW, and we can keep everyone informed on that. But at the moment, we're concentrating on end users.
Yeah, for sure. So if I'm hearing it correctly, not widely available retail, but can be arranged for those who want it to happen.
Correct. We're actually doing quite a bit with the tanks, the temporary tanks at the moment at the Yale project. But we're certainly able to provide larger tanks for a specific application, depending on the circumstance. That's something that we do on a regular basis.
I know we have a couple municipal fleets and fleet managers on the call. Is anybody considering this? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Don't be bashful. All right. While you're thinking about that, Marcos Gonzalez is asking, are there any opportunities to refine renewable diesel in New England? And how might that work?
I'll take there may be other people on this call that can answer this better than I, but you don't really see refined product production in New England. I'm not personally aware of any facilities that produce refined products in New England. The region brings in its supply from everywhere else. You might see some activity in the Mid-Atlantic over a longer period of time as some of the existing refineries down there look to either co-process or convert their facilities to be able to produce renewable diesel. There's a facility, Brea, in eastern Canada that recently converted over to produce renewable diesel. But in New England specifically, no, it's we import our product here.
All right, Orion has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was interested to hear people's perspectives, and that, we have a new administration, and, in the Northeast, a lot of states have climate goals, and a lot of those are relying on along electrification and ambitious projects like offshore wind. And we're potentially going to see less federal funding towards those things. And, now seems like a time that if we want to meet our climate goals, we have to think about, things like alternative fuels and renewable diesel in order to meet our climate goals. And do you foresee, states embracing that with education and incorporating it more into their climate plans, and maybe even looking at things like LCFS.
I think that's a great question. I could try to take a stab at it. I think a lot of our debate got bogged down in doing like California standards or Connecticut standards. And I don't really think California standards were the right fit, like John was alluding to, for Connecticut. So, I mean, I do think we have a supportive administration and framework here in Connecticut, and they've shown to be supportive of moving in the right direction in the past. I think it's about expanding the knowledge base, because I think from last year, like I said, a lot of the conversation got centered around electric cars, and none of the conversation was about renewable diesel or any alternatives, right? So I think it's about broadening that conversation, talking about different types of fuels and not just honing in on one, because when you hone on one, you hone in on their problems, right? So I don't think we have a great answer to your question, but I do think we have a good environment here in Connecticut that something can happen.
Ariane's from up in Maine, and I know we have some folks from Vermont as well. Any sense of distribution up that way, presumably from Global?
There are a number of institutions that have expressed interest in renewable diesel, notably academic institutions, some outdoors recreational interests. Everybody's kind of in a pilot mode right now, trying to experiment. We'll try to figure out whether this is going to work for them. I think the best feedback is generally no feedback, and that's what we've received from the folks that we've worked with. It just feels like a seamless transition. But I would say that more of the interest has been in southern New England at this time, but northern New England has started exploring opportunities to utilize RD.
And does there need to be a certain amount of documented demand in order for you to enter into those markets? I think Yale was a primary motivator here, given the size of its construction activity. But just how does this roll out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a specific number for you. It's one of those classic "it depends" situations. Really, what you need is ratable demand and a willingness to pay a little bit to cover the delta between delivering into a non-incented market. California gets a benefit from its low carbon fuel standard program. I think there was a nice Clean Cities presentation by the group in Montana that kind of highlighted activity outside California in the Rockies and New Jersey. It really depends, but you do need to get a number of stakeholders that are willing to regularly take the fuel and be willing to cover that small gap in order to make it attractive to put it into tanks, because it competes against diesel fuel and other fuel products, and if companies can't carry that product and regularly move it through their system, they're going to go with other products. We believe this has a good long-term future, and that's why we've brought it here.
Somebody asked the price differential. What is it here in Connecticut right now?
I don't have a number off the top of my head.
Randy, do you know?
We're seeing anywhere from 3 to 6 cents per gallon differential, depending on market conditions. There was another question in here about using renewable diesel in heating oil. That space has really been taken care of with the biodiesel component. which is more of a first generation renewable diesel. I don't know whether that answers the question or not, but and currently biodiesel is being blended into heating oil. I believe, is it up to 5% at this point, JW?
It depends where. New York, Connecticut, and Rhode Island all have mandates. Rhode Island is the only one of the three that allows renewable diesel to qualify for the mandate. But renewable diesel can flow into heating oil as well. Sometimes you see 20% a fairly popular blend for a lot of people for biodiesel, but renewable diesel obviously can go much higher than that.
We have a question from Jeremy.
Yeah, hi, it's Jeremy from Clean Transportation Communities, Southern Connecticut. Also, I just wanted to piggyback on Marcos's question there about local refineries. I saw on the map there that Pennsylvania seems like they're the closest ones to us. I was wondering if anyone has any more information about that, like how much they're producing, where they're getting it from, if it's like a similar circular economy as what California has going on at all. Any other information about that?
I think that was from Rich's slide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't know much about Pennsylvania.
Richard, do you know anything further about Pennsylvania's operations or?
Yeah, sorry, I just have the information on the map. I've got a spreadsheet that a couple of the slides were basically screenshots of the spreadsheet. I'll pop off real quick and see if I can find Pennsylvania, because right off the top of my head, I was surprised to see that show up on the DOE map because I wasn't really aware of the Pennsylvania operation. But I'll go check it real quick.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious because that seems like the closest one to New England. Thanks.
Well, isn't everything close if you got water?
True. All right. Any more questions? Second.
Yeah, I've got a question. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Henry Cooper. I work with HDR. I'm a mechanical engineer. And I was wondering if, Rich, if you could expand a little bit on operation and maintenance, especially from like a pilot perspective. If I was to bring in, I don't know, 500-gallon tank and wanted to start to change out parts of my fleet, would I need to go through any kind of processes either with local infrastructure or with the equipment itself? Do I need to consider flushing any equipment before I start using renewable diesel? Is any other, from a mechanics standpoint, things that they need to be looking for during a pilot process?
Yeah, Henry, great questions. By the way, I looked at my spreadsheet. I don't have Pennsylvania on there, but I may be able to drill down from the DOE map to see who is doing what and where. I just don't know right now. That is a very new map, and by that I say probably within the last 30 to 60 days. To your other questions, Henry, about fleet use, switching to renewable diesel is just as easy as picking up the phone. Of course, if you're a government fleet, you're going to have to establish a contract with them. Just pick up the phone and order a delivery. It's going to mix in any blend with your existing petroleum tank. You don't have to flush it out or empty it. It's probably a good idea to rinse your tanks, draw down your petroleum diesel just to eliminate any variables. I myself didn't do that. We had recently had our tanks washed. So it was just as easy as making the call to the distributor. There's no modifications needed. I think some of our mechanics, and it may be because we told them we switched fuels and they were looking for stuff. noted that maybe on some of the older vehicles, and in Oakland, it's not unusual to have a medium heavy duty vehicle that's 20 years old. But we did get reports on older vehicles. There was some weepage around some of the softer seals, the rubber seals, not drips, not leaks, but mechanics thought they saw something like on filters. I don't know that that's true or not. If I were to do it all over again, I wouldn't even tell the drivers or the mechanics we were switching fuels. I'd just have a fuel delivery after hours and then let them bring something to my attention. As far as an individual tank, for California, and each state may have different processes, but it's the same. The reality is the chemical composition of renewable diesel is the same as petroleum diesel, minus some aromatics. And I'm not a chemist or an engineer, but it seems like it should not be the same chemical chain, yet it is. So California, for the purposes of storage and permitting, renewable diesel is treated exactly the same as petroleum diesel. So if you would need a permit for a petroleum diesel 500 gallon above ground tank, then you need one for renewable diesel. That's not the case in California. So we basically used our existing underground storage tank, but I would encourage you to check with your local regulatory authorities. For us in California, it's the Water Resources Control Board. I don't know why, but they have authority over fuel storage.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Did I miss anything?
Not from my perspective. Thank you.
Good. When you were asking the question, I was looking through my spreadsheet, so I apologize for that.
Well, I will send a contact information of everybody around so you guys could have East River's contact as well as Global's contact. And Rich, if you have more questions too. But yeah, does anybody have any other questions? Now's your time. Do you have some time here?
Yeah, I have one question, please. What I'm understanding now as a retail wise is not available in the Connecticut yet.
Yeah, so they did answer that slightly. Not
Also,
like
maybe
you
I
can't.
missed that.
Yeah, you can't go to a gas tank and pump it into your fuel, but it can be arranged if you're interested. Contact one of these guys and they can set you up.
Yeah, Noble Energy is certainly well positioned to be part of introducing renewable diesel to the retail market.
Yep.
So is that what you're thinking, Ronnie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm calling from Noble. We have a multiple location in Connecticut, and we are interested to have some load. And just the another question is, I think they answered some questions. No need to prepare anything. It's gonna be working with the existing location and use the same pump, same tank.
Yeah. So did you say do you use all the same infrastructure, same pump, same tank, and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty. As Richard was saying, it's pretty drop-in replacement, which means it can go right into your car as is, and everything should work the same. And from the feedback we heard, and as JW was alluding to, he doesn't get feedback, which is good because it works as it should.
Just maybe you could build on that a little bit too. Like you can put it into any blend that you want. You could do 20% blend, 50%. R99 seems to be the most popular at the moment, but you could do it at a lower blend level too.
It's a renewable diesel working with the DF. We know that regular diesel we mix it DF with it, and that ones need to be mixed with DF. Some trucks need it.
I'm not 100% certain on this, but I do believe that renewable diesel also is required to to do that as well. I could get back with you on that one though.
Okay.
So
Again, email Johnson, maybe I gonna email it to you. I need more details. I think we have one location close your location in the Sturbridge, Mass.
yeah, I'm sharing. Noble Energy has quite a few locations in the area.
Yes, yeah.
So, it'd be great if you were interested. I'll stop sharing for the moment. So, would they work through East River or would they work through Noble? I don't know how retail distribution works. I'm a novice at this.
You asking me that one?
No, I'm asking East River and Global. So
Oh.
we have a retailer who's got substantial market penetration, who's a leader in electric vehicle charging and alternative fuels. If they're interested, they work through Global, they work through East River. How does that work?
I think we would work in conjunction with Global on that project. One of the other questions that came in that I wanted to address is, I think there was a question about infrastructure and using renewable diesel and an existing petroleum diesel tank. One of the things that we find is important that it gets overlooked quite a bit of the time is the actual maintenance of the tank itself. Tanks, because they're a vented tank, they're continually drawing air into that tank as the fuel is being pumped out, which can lead to contaminants inside the tank, condensation, and all of those things are very important to make sure that you have an active tank maintenance program, whether you're working with biodiesel or renewable diesel. So that's something to consider when you're looking at your infrastructure, the need to, it's really not a change of anything, but it's important to make sure that that tank housekeeping is up to date, to make sure there aren't any issues going forward. And that's something that we can help you with in terms of looking at the tanks and doing fuel sampling and that sort of thing to make sure that everything is up to speed before you do a conversion.
So I'd like to offer, as John again from Motor Transport, as you get to the right point in this thing where there's actually supply available to individual fleets and things, I'd be happy to reach out to my association on behalf of folks in order to say, this is what we got going on in Connecticut, to spread the word a little bit. Whether or not they buy in or don't buy in, that's fine. But, I don't know how that all would work, but I do want to offer that, I'm always finding things that I think work well for my members to try and get it out to them. And this would be another thing for them to consider. So at the right time, let me know when the supply's there to do that.
We'd be happy to help out with any literature that you need, John, to approach your members. And I can
Likewise.
tackle. Yeah.
Hey, Peter, I did some quick research on the Pennsylvania refinery, and actually that map reflects renewable fuel production. It's not specifically renewable diesel. That location appears to be a Delta Air refinery in Trainer, Pennsylvania. They're probably producing sustainable aviation fuel, which is very similar to renewable diesel, but I think there's a larger incentive. So it's quite possible that that is not renewable diesel refining production in the state of Pennsylvania.
Thank you for getting back to that, Richard. Appreciate that.
And before we end, Marcos raised, would Pride stations be interested? And Craig Peters, who's on the call or was on the call, has a close working relationship with Pride. So he may reach out to them about that. Shall we wrap it up, Peter?
I think we can wrap it up. Well, thank you guys all for joining us. Like I said, it's a rainy Tuesday, but I'm glad you guys made time for us. I will send everybody's contact information and the slides and recording after. And a special thank you to Richard. I know this is not your time zone, so I appreciate you working through that in your brain and getting it all right and making the time for us as well. So with that, have a good day, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Peter.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Nice
Thank you.
meeting everyone.